Hey everybody, today I'm going to talk about Jack Kirby, the king of comics, and, more specifically, what Kirby contributed to the depiction of action in comics. When we read a comic book, the pages that really stick with us are usually the ones with amazing, dynamic depictions of action. It's often these frames that let the story leap off the pages and come to life, making the experience less literary and more cinematic. Let's take a second to define what action in comics actually is. Action is energetic movement, and artists use illustrations of action in order to captivate and excite the reader. However, action is not the same as violence. Of course, it's true that some comic action is violent. Okay, we can probably say that most comic action is violent, depending what type of comic we're talking about. But there's much more to action than punches and kicks. That brings us to the king of comics, Jack Kirby. When it comes to action on the comic book page, violent and non-violent, everyone owes something to Jack Kirby's work. So why was his art so good? Why has he been deemed the king of comics? Simply put, Kirby's comic art was absolutely packed with action. He filled his pages with exaggerated energy and drama on a scale that was unlike any other artist at the time. In a Kirby frame, the characters and objects are constantly being thrust at the reader. Nobody is passive. Every part of the characters' bodies signifies emotion and action. Their mouths are open, and their hands are either clenched into fists or flexing in strained, claw-like positions. Their arms and legs are drawn in power stances at the apex of their intended movement. Now, Kirby isn't known for his accuracy when it comes to drawing the human body. In fact, he continually disregarded conventional proportions and anatomy in order to portray the most dynamic movement possible. For example, to show muscle and sinew in movement, he would draw these straight, heavy lines across various parts of the body. Instead of using photographic references, he simply drew squiggles through calves and forearms. He drew hands that were thick and blocky. This stuff was definitely not accurate, but Kirby's readers interpret the movement in his art intuitively. The momentum and raw energy simply overpower the technical inaccuracies. It's likely that Kirby developed this style of art because he was usually working on a ridiculous amount of comics at the same time. Therefore, he had to meet numerous hard deadlines. So, he had to develop a quick way to draw dramatic movement and raw energy without having to concern himself with traditional artistic boundaries. For Kirby, the more he had to draw under these restrictions, the more abbreviated his style became. His images are the opposite of static. They convey a frantic, animated quality that pushes the story forward with an almost operatic sense of drama. The way Kirby masterfully captures movement in his art allows readers to register that the characters' bodies are moving through time. Everything pushing into the foreground of the frame is what's happening in the here and now, and everything that's shrinking into the background is just a few moments in the past. Kirby has total control here. He's showing us his raw imagination and his sense of movement through time, with no boundary between him and the reader. His art is intimate and open. Kirby certainly isn't the end-all and be-all of comic book art, but his disregard for the conventional pushed the limits of his time and set a new standard of what action can look like on a comic book page. There are few who can stand beside him in terms of how much he gave to the world of comic book art. Hail to the king. Thanks for watching Shapes on a Page.